We're learning more about reports that data was unknowingly harvested from millions of Americans. On Friday, Facebook announced that data from Cambridge Analytica was suspended for violating the social media company's standards and practices. Reports say that data was harvested from up to 50 million Americans without their permission. Some of that work was done to help President Trump get elected. Joining me now on set is Dan Patterson. He's a senior writer for Tech Republic. Welcome to you, Dan.
Great to be here.
So in 2016, Cambridge Analytica CEO Alexander Nix told you, quote, "We use nearly 5,000 different data points about you to craft and target a message." Can you tell us, Dan, what those data points represented?
Some I can, some we can only speculate about. The data points that Cambridge gathered are very similar to what you fill in when you go to a social network like Facebook. The others are far more interesting. For example, there is a technology called Silver Push. Silver Push is in many of the apps that we use today, and it listens ambiently, just like Siri or Alexa might listen, and it sends that information back to the application that's using it, and it can create a profile based on what you are listening to or watching, all without you doing a search or performing any activity on the web. So while Nix gave us some of these data points, they were very cagey about the other data points. One thing that they did say, and a source told me afterwards, was, well, we use the things that will enervate you. They will get you to click. If you're passively looking at something, nothing will happen. But if you're engaging with an asset on Facebook, all of a sudden you have access to a tremendous amount of information about the user.
So this was not an ordinary extraction of data. What exactly was Cambridge doing with this information?
Well, we don't know precisely what Cambridge was doing. What we do know is that this wasn't a typical type of hack. For example, last year at Equifax, we saw hackers exploit the code to extract data. That's not what happened here. What happened was that Cambridge used and perhaps misused the information that's available about you to almost any advertiser within Facebook and other social networks. So this isn't really about Cambridge Analytica. It's about the information that's available about you across the social web to advertisers. Some may be more covert than Cambridge.
Well, whistleblower Christopher Wiley said in an interview with the UK's Channel 4 News that Facebook facilitated the project because, quote, they had applications that had these permissions in the first place. What does that mean? Is Facebook complicit here?
Whether Facebook is complicit or not isn't really for me to determine. However, anyone who has done any advertising on Facebook can see the amount of information that's available to you. So, for example, if you see a quiz, maybe it's what type of personality are you, and you click Give Access in Facebook, all of a sudden you are providing a wealth of information to that advertiser. Now, an unsophisticated advertiser might only use that for display ads or very basic advertising. A sophisticated advertiser will harvest that data, put it into a database, and use machine learning and predictive analytics, or in other words, artificial intelligence, to create a profile about you. That profile can be used outside of Facebook to target you. In this case, it was for GOTV, Get Out the Vote, activities, and other things that the Trump campaign used.
Well, European regulators have been calling for more regulations on user privacy, and Facebook has been slow to respond. But given what we now know and given the track record of what we've seen, what's your sense of what lies ahead here in the American regulatory space?
Well, we will see what happens with regulators, but it is pretty unlikely that these companies will continue to operate. And by operate, I mean gathering information about users and using that to deploy advertising without regulators jumping in. So, of course, I'm not a regulator, I don't know, but I think that particularly with the upcoming GDPR, the regulation about how cloud data is used in Europe, we will see some sort of regulation in the future.
Just one more before I let you go. What's the reality, though, when you look at technology versus regulation? The pace of technology seems to just be accelerating. And I wonder if you are tasked with keeping an eye on this, what is the reality of that challenge in trying to determine what's even happening in the first place?
Historically, Technology has always outpaced regulation, and historically, regulation dials technology back, and then we find a happy medium. What's happening here is the hyper-accelerated pace of technology and perhaps the lack of sophistication with regulators and lawmakers to make good policy or good regulation that finds a balance.
Well, disturbing allegations that have been revealed. Dan Patterson, thanks so much for helping us to understand it. Appreciate it.
Great to be here.